Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2025 Sanderson Farms DFS Tactics show. I believe I changed all that. I did. Sorry about that. Made sure that I changed the thumbnail and the title of the show. Welcome to Calls. We have a fun show for you all this evening. A lot to cover. We're going to take our final look at the forecast for Jackson, Mississippi. We're going to cover the mixed condition model that I've made for the Sanderson Farms and the Country Club of Jackson. We'll go through my rankings, figure out where the general public seems to be settling on certain players, see if we can maneuver around them, and of course at the end of the show we'll make some lineups. So we have a lot to cover this evening. Let's not waste any time. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from FantasyNational.com. It is the best golf analytic tool out there for you. When you go check out FantasyNational.com, you won't regret it. In the description of the video, there are links to all the social media. First off, my X and Instagram, where normally on Mondays I'll post research regarding some course info for the week, some tournament info, and patterns of previous winners and things of that nature. Didn't do anything for the Sanderson Farms because the past winners were not very consistent in any of their prior metrics and anything like that. But normally, if you want to see the weekly research that I do on the PGA Tour, give me a follow at your preferred social media site. X is also where I place my weekly betting cards and top player usage in the DFS contest I play. That comes out every Wednesday after the DFS Tactics show, so that will be out later this evening. You want to see the players that I've put my own money on and the players I'm using most often in my lineups, give me a follow over at X. Lastly, for social media, Gabe's handle's in the description. He writes a great article called The Fringe. You really should subscribe to it and go show him some support. Follow him on social media because when we pick up the 2026 Picks Challenge, that is where we're going to post our detailed write-ups. So you don't want to miss that. Make sure you're following him over on social media as well. And then lastly, we are live. Chat's open. I see a couple of you in there already. I'll get to you momentarily. But chat's open. I want to hear from you all. In addition to the poll question, which I'll post momentarily, who's your winner this week, any lasting thoughts on the Ryder Cup, all of that, and then moving forward to the Sanderson Farms, how do you think the course is going to play, anything and everything Sanderson Farms as well. Put your thoughts and opinions into the chat. I'll get to them, and then if you're not able to catch the show live, put your thoughts and opinions into the comments. I'll always get to those as well. So let's get into it. Let's figure out our strategies and our tactics for the 2025 Sanderson Farms. And we're going to start, as we always do, at the Super Forecast over at Windfinder. Good evening, Rose. Thanks for jumping in chat. Hopefully you've had a good time in the time that I have not been live. I don't recall seeing you for the Pro Core that week, and then I only did a couple of shows for the Ryder Cup last week. What did you think of the Ryder Cup? Who do you think is the most to blame for the American struggles, or vice versa? Who do you think is the person who deserves the most credit for Europe's win? What do you think of 2027? All of that. But it's good to see you in chat this evening. Very, very much appreciated. Let me post this poll question before we get too much further, before I forget. Didn't have anything solid in mind, especially since there's only one Ryder Cup player in the field this week, and that's Rasmus Højgaard, the lone European who did not accrue any points last week. So instead, the two biggest names probably are the Højgaard twins. You could make an argument for Akshay Bhatia, maybe Thorbjornsen. But the two biggest names in the field this week are probably the Højgaard twins. So our poll question for the week is, which Højgaard twin are you playing? Are you playing Nikolai? Are you playing Rasmus? Are you playing both? Or are you playing neither? So would love to hear the community's response to that. Looking at the forecast for the Country Club of Jackson, this has changed rather recently, in the sense that Thursday, the morning gusty winds have died down a little bit. All today, it was almost a mirror image Thursday and Friday with, calm winds all day, but very gusty winds in the morning, which is not typically what you see. So because of this, you probably could argue for a Thursday AM, Friday PM favor, because the gustiest winds appear to be on Friday morning. You could argue that. I did not factor it in when I was building my lineups, but if this is the final forecast that you see before you submit lineups, then I would certainly not make too much of a gripe if you wanted to consider the Thursday AM, Friday PM the favored half of the draw based on this. People who put the players together on the U.S. team, also the Europeans, were a real team. I tend to agree. I think Keegan got a whole lot of backlash early, saying, Saturday, Sunday, maybe even early Monday. But as we've been far enough removed from the Ryder Cup, there's plenty of blame to go around. And I don't think Keegan's necessarily all to blame for it. Now, there's been enough talk about how the English and Morikawa pairing was, a disaster. And I certainly wouldn't have put them together, let alone out there twice. I think Friday you can maybe somewhat forgive it if you had a hunch or whatever, but after seeing their performance on Friday, there was no justification to send them out for foursomes on Saturday. It also doesn't help that Scotty went 0-4 between the foursomes and 4-ball. Bryson was 1-3. The Americans just didn't play that well. The course wasn't set up very well, at least for the Americans. So, there's plenty of blame to go around. And you're right, the Europeans, they treat it as almost like a major. They really invest into it, and it shows. They're a team. They trust their captain, and Tommy and John Rahm both are 6-0-0 in alternate shot in foursomes. That's pretty good. It's not bad. So, until the Americans, I don't want to say get serious about it, but start treating it like the Europeans do, I see this being a common occurrence, is I think how I'll phrase that. Especially considering the Europeans have so many rising stars. Hovland, Obear, rising stars in terms of Ryder Cups. I mean, this was only Obear's second Ryder Cup. The Højgaard twins are going to get better. McIntyre, this was only his second Ryder Cup. He's going to be a Ryder Cup mainstay for years to come. So Europe's deep. After the thrashing they took at Whistling Straits, they certainly have changed their mindset. And it's impressive. And a lot of credit goes to Luke Donald too. But yeah, this is the forecast for the Sanderson Farms. I'll zoom out, take a look at the weekend. The weekend looks much the same. Single digit sustained winds, gusty winds, both Saturday and Sunday. The rain does appear to have moved out, or at least moved later in the week or weekend. Because when we looked at this Monday, Sunday looked like it could have been a wash, but now that doesn't seem to be the case. So, like I said, if you wanted to make the argument for Thursday AM, Friday PM, that's fine. I didn't factor it in to my decision making and who I'm playing in lineups and how much and all that. So with that, we'll move to Fantasy National. I meant to have these unstarred as I was running behind and forgot to. So let me do that, and I'll catch up with you in chat momentarily. I saw something about Xander and Colin. One thing that I was very, very correct about, I had a lot of concerns regarding Colin. And you can argue, the partner wasn't the best for him and all that. But Colin didn't necessarily play all that well. I was not very confident in Colin, and he did not come through for the Americans. Xander and Colin were supposed to sit 2 days. They left out Young, JJ, and Ben. Young did play 4 of the 5 sessions. You can argue that, being the New York native, maybe he needed to play all 5 and feed off the energy. I'm not too upset with Young only playing 4. Griffin only playing 1 before singles didn't make a whole lot of sense, considering how good a form he had been leading into the Ryder Cup. Spawn, your U.S. Open champion, ball striker, premier, didn't make a lot of sense to see him only in best ball. So those guys were supposed to play more. Yes, showed favoritism. I do think that Justin Thomas was decent. He was clearly the emotional leader for the Americans, and he played well. He played fine. I think his record was 3-2, 2-1, something like that. It was fine. It wasn't standout, but it wasn't Morikawa bad or Russell Henley bad. So I can forgive Thomas for that as well. Okay, moving to the Sanderson Farms, there's not a whole lot to really look at in terms of filter, especially because I used the only filter that we looked at this week a little bit in the mixed condition model. Talked all week how I don't feel comfortable using this over 7,400 filter because the course has not played over 7,400 yards in several years. So if they do play over 70, or if it does play 7,400, this week, I'll be a little weak to that. But we've seen a pattern of this course not stretching to its full length on the scorecard. So with that, let's just go ahead and jump into the mixed condition model. I want to save enough time to build lineups and things of that nature. So the mixed condition model that I have for the Sanderson Farms this week, we're going to start with 15% off the tee. I know that's a little bit heavy, especially since off the tee favors distance. But when I went back and looked at, the style of players that have won here and going through the course breakdown, seeing all of the off the tee, particularly for your top 5s and for your winners, especially against around the green, that is, I felt like I wanted to make a decent factor off the tee. Sam Burns and Luke List, Kevin Yu, all these guys are, hitting it a long way. Kevin Yu's generally pretty accurate, and he's really good off the tee in general. So I really wanted to make sure I had enough off the tee in the mixed condition model. 15% might be a bit heavy. It really might be a bit heavy, but that is where my lean is this week, particularly with distance. 10% approach, again, you could probably swap for 10% off the tee and 15% approach, and I wouldn't argue with you too much about it, but I'm just more so thinking that we're going to be focused on off the tee this week at the end of it. So 10% approach, because approach hasn't been totally mandatory. These greens are generally pretty easy to hit, which means it comes down to a putting contest a lot of times. And I have a little bit of some what you could say hidden approach further down in the mixed condition model. Good evening, Darnell. Thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. Hopefully you had a good Ryder Cup if you decided to play or wager anything for it. Hopefully you've had success in whatever endeavors you've been partaking in and are ready for the Sanderson Farms this week. I'm sorry, I've got a really bad itch in my nose. Back at it, ready for pain. We'll see. The Procore wasn't very good for me, admittedly. I did not do anything for the Ryder Cup. I was just a fan. I didn't put any money on it, wager or DFS. So I was just purely a fan. So we're going to try and get back into it for the Sanderson Farms. Haven't been doing golf. Patiently waiting for hockey. All the power to you, Darnell. That is. I'm a sports guy. That is one that I just can't get into. I just can't. It's probably because of the area of the country that I live in. It's just not popular here. So it's just never been on my radar. But I'm glad to hear that you've been doing at least okay. At least, not playing golf, at least fantasy golf. 10% approach, only 5% putting, and I'm only doing 5% putting because putting is not very predictable. I don't want to overweight putting in terms of analysis this week, just because we've seen players who are generally not good putters. Again, Luke List, Kevin Yu, these players that are generally not good putters win here. They just have a hot week. And so I wanted to give a little bit of a boost to anybody who was, Bermuda specialists or maybe lightning speed specialists, but I didn't want to overweight it because it's such a fickle statistic. Going to get on track this week with golf and win. That's the plan, Darnell. That's the plan. We'll see how it goes. 5% distance, just flat out distance. I know I've got a lot of distance in off the tee, but the fairways aren't necessarily mandatory around here. The rough isn't penal to play out of. So just the bigger hitters of the golf ball wanted to give them a slight boost. 5% distance. The biggest portion of the mixed condition model, 20% in opportunities gained when rounds have been easy relative to par. Guys are going to have to shoot 20 under or pretty darn close to it to be in contention this week at the Sanderson Farms. That means you have to make 25, 26 birdies, or maybe 22 birdies and an eagle or two. Either way, you're going to have to give yourself lots of opportunities. So that is the crux of the mixed condition model. I want to see guys who just are going to flag hunt, considering these greens are easy. The greens aren't overly complicated. All they are really is just lightning speed. There's not a whole lot of slope or anything to them. They're just really fast, which professionals are going to be able to handle that. So guys who give themselves the most opportunities generally do the best around here. So 20% opportunities. It's not enough to give yourself the opportunity. I'm just going to use the name Joel Damon. You're going to have to make some putts. If you can't putt, generally speaking, you're not going to win. Having said that, that's why I didn't want to put a whole lot of emphasis in putting, because it can vary. I mean, Kevin, you can gain 6 strokes on the greens and win. So it can vary. But I want to see players that generally convert more often than not. 10% birdies or better when rounds are easy. 10% and 200 plus procs. This is in combination with the par 5s down here. 200 plus procs has been an enormous factor for success around the Country Club of Jackson. There are 4 par 5s here, and all of them are attackable in 2. So the chance to get for yourself, an eagle or a very, very easy birdie is mandatory. You have to score on those holes. So 10% in 200 plus procs. Not only that, there are a couple of longer par 4s, and 2 par 3s over 200 plus. So felt pretty good about having a little bit of extra weight in the 200 plus procs bucket. 5% in total par 4s, 5% in this specific range of par 4s, 6 of the 10 par 4s at the Country Club of Jackson measured to this length. And then finally, 3 of the 4 par 5s measured to this length, 550 to 600. So there's a look at the mixed condition model that I've made for the Sanderson Farms this week. Hopefully I've explained my thought process, reason why I've put the metrics that I have any filters applied to them, percentages with them. You know, areas I could be weak. This tournament generally doesn't promote around the green. So, you know, if this is one of those outlier years, I'll definitely be weak to that. I could have a little bit too much in off the tee, not enough in approach, but that is my lean for the week. And also having a whole lot in opportunities and procs, there's kind of some hidden percentage in approach, if you will, with that. Can I ask why so much on 200 plus procs while 10 on approach? Like I was saying, there's some of this is kind of a little bit of hidden approach, if you will. But like I was mentioning with the 200 plus procs, the 4 par 5s, the couple of longer par 4s, I think they're like 480. One says it's 505 on the scorecard, but they have not played it to 505, you know, in the last 5 years. So, you know, this is a long, you know, like 490. You got a 479, a 482. So there are a few longer par 4s, and then you have a couple of longer par 3s. But mostly, and I'll have to, in fact, I'll just bring up that file very quickly. Mostly, off the tee has been the main stroke, you know, like main shot type around here, other than putting. And I've talked ad nauseum about why I don't put a whole lot of putting in my mixed condition models. But if you take a look at the Sanderson Farms versus the average full field course, you'll see like off the tee, it's only 3%, but you'll see like distance, 13%, fairways, 30% or close to it. Like I just think off the tee is going to matter, and the approach hasn't really been the biggest of factors. Not really the biggest of factors. It is a factor, don't get me wrong, but I don't know. That's where I settled. Like I said at the very, very beginning of the mixed condition model explanation, that you could easily put 15% here, 10% here, Darnell. I wouldn't argue with you at all on it. It's just kind of where I landed. Around 150, do 175. Are you talking procs? I didn't feel like that was as important, especially considering that there aren't a whole lot of approach shots that come from that range at this course, and what data there is regarding the proximities. It's not very important, Rosé. Not very important. Whereas the 200 plus is. And again, this is against the average full field course. So, you know, it's not a perfect science. But I felt pretty darn confident with the 200 plus, especially with the 2 longer par 3s. And not every one of these players is the Højgaard brothers or Luke List or whatever. You've got some shorter hitters in this field who are going to have to do well from 200 plus, because they just don't hit the ball as far as some of these others. So that is where, or my reasoning for the 200 plus. This data here, you know, showing that it does present a lot of success for players who have played well in the past here, in combination with the fact that it is, you know, right at PGA Tour average, but it is the most frequent approach shot length at the Country Club of Jackson. So hopefully that answers those questions for you too. But good questions, absolutely. Great questions. And again, you might not agree with my assessment. Just explaining why I've built the mixed condition model the way I have. We're going to move to Microsoft Excel, the reveal of my rankings for the Sanderson Farms. As a reminder for returning viewers, for your information, if you're a new viewer, my rankings are based on 3 criteria. The Fantasy National rank. Fantasy National will spit out a ranking for all the players in the field based on the mixed condition model that we just went over, metrics, percentages that we just talked about. Course value is an attempt at giving the player a numerical value at how well they have played that course in the past 5 years. I only go back 5 years in all of my data. Players like Keith Mitchell, who I believe is 1 for 4. Adam Schenk has really struggled here. He's going to have a high course value, whereas somebody like Stefan Jaeger, who is 4 for 4, his best finish is only a T23, but his worst finish is a T30. So, I mean, he's been very, very consistent. He's going to have a low course value considering he has generally played really, really well at this place, or, in these instances, a lower course value means they've played well at that course past 5 years. And the last factor in my rankings, we are playing DFS. We're trying to find unique options off of our fellow contestants. These are projected ownerships per Gabe, and these come out in his Fringe article that comes out every Wednesday. Again, I cannot recommend it enough that you subscribe to his article. You'll be able to get these early on a Wednesday, along with his, his top values, his favorite plays, and things like that he color coordinates in the article. So can't recommend it enough. These are projected ownerships from Gabe, and so we're gonna, we use that as part of our rankings. My top 10 for the Sanderson Farms. I don't have a whole lot to gripe about, with the exception of maybe one player, and I'll get into that. But my rankings for this week, I have Michael Thorbjornsen, number 1, even with the high amount of ownership. Just great statistics all the way across here, with the exception of maybe the par 4s. But Thorbjornsen leads the way. Joel Damon is second. I understand why he's second. I certainly wouldn't put him second if I were just to go through the field and rank them. I understand why he's second. He is number 2 in opportunities. He's number 2 in 200 plus proximity. The putter is usually what holds him back. He's not an abject failure on Lightning Bermuda. So he's got a lot going for him. I understand why he's number 2. I wouldn't put him there. He's also unique, so that causes him to rise a little bit. You see that he was 5th purely by the analytics, rising because he's got a decent course value and is unique. Kevin Yu 3rd, defending champion, no problem here. I do think he will play well. I'm not going to pick him to win, but I do think he'll play well. Davis Thompson 4th, Eric Van Rooyen 5th. Again, not totally in love with this. But again, I understand why. Tied with Joel Damon and being second in opportunities gained, he can go extremely low. But you see the irons can be pretty darn cold as well. So not in love with it. Hayden Springer 6th, Akshay Bhatia 7th, Chris Ventura 6,800. Chris Ventura 8th. Somebody who I really want to highlight as we go through tonight. But a lot of opportunities. He's actually pretty good off the tee. His big bugaboo, for whatever reason, he just doesn't convert on par 5s or at least doesn't play this range of par 5s very well. But decent with the irons. 10th, 200 plus procs. Pretty darn good putter on Lightning Bermuda as well. Plenty of distance. I like Chris Ventura quite a bit, and he did finish 6th here. I believe it was last year. It might have been 2 years ago. But he has played here. It was only one time, but he did play well. Chris Ventura 8th. Cameron Champ 9th. Keith Mitchell 10th. Keith Mitchell's always going to rise generally with me because of all of the ball striking I generally put in my mixed condition models. But you see, he's not been very good around here. So he did fall from where Fantasy National had him. There's a look at my top 10. Again, I'm not totally in love with Eric Van Rooyen being 5th. I understand why. I definitely wouldn't have Joel Damon 2nd. Again, I understand why based on the mathematical computation. But otherwise, don't really have a whole lot of qualms with these rankings, which I can, and I have had some qualms with my rankings somewhat recently. So, I feel okay about it. Joel Damon's one of my favorite plays without stats, just going off field. It's all about the putter for Joel. If Joel can roll the rock at all, he's going to be a factor, and he's been okay here, I believe. Let's check him just very, very quickly, because we have plenty to get into tonight. But Joel Damon at the Sanderson Farms, I'll swivel out of the way. He's been very, very hit and miss, which is Joel Damon. I mean, it is. He missed the cut last year because he lost 3.5. I mean, apparently didn't make a single putt. He's gained as much as 5 here in the past. It really does all come down to the putter for Joel, and that's why he rates so high for me, because his irons are generally really darn good. He gives himself a lot of opportunities. All these things. He just has to make some putts. So that's what I can say about Joel Damon. He's just got to make some putts. Joel Damon going to be 0% owned. Joel Damian going to be 0%. Joel Damon maybe a little bit more. You're probably right with that. Don't know this Joel Damian guy. Coming back with Taylor Montgomery. We'll get into that. I don't hate that either, Rose. All right, let's sort on the price board, figure out where our fellow contestants seem to be going at various price points. See if we can maneuver around them, or how we're going to maneuver around them. The pricing this week is very soft. Very, very soft. We have one 10K player. That's Akshay Bhatia. And he's at 10-1. So this is a week where the 6Ks are not mandatory at all. At all. Seems this course has a lot of hit or miss golfers with history. It very much does, Darnell. That was a big part of the end of Monday night's show. I was showing you how there's, for whatever reason, a lot of volatility here. Some players like Sam Burns will win and just not play because they don't need to. That's some part of it. You have very few players who are consistent here at Sanderson Farms for whatever reason. And there isn't a whole lot of water trouble on the course. There's 5 holes with water in play. So I wouldn't think that would be a factor either. A lot of times it probably just is simply the fact that it comes down to a putting contest and whether a player is having, a good putting week or not, seemingly. Going to lean into the players that are in good form from the research that you've done. It's never a bad way to approach it. Not at all. Okay. With only one 10K play, I'm going to go ahead and include him with the 9s. So you've got Akshay at 10-1, Kevin Yu at 99, Minwoo, Davis Thompson, Rasmus, Michael Thorbjornsen, Poston, Griot, Bridgman, Nikolai, and Rico Hoey at the top of the board. Your two overwhelmingly, I'll say overwhelming because Davis Thompson's third at 20%. Your two overwhelmingly most popular players are Akshay at 25%, Thorbjornsen at 24.5%. One of these two I'm going to use a lot. One of these two I'm not going to use much at all. I am going to play Akshay. I'm going to be so much lower, so much underweight on this 25%. Yes, he was second by the numbers. Lots of opportunities. One of the best iron players in this field. Yada, yada, yada. He lacks some distance. At least he has in 2025. And he's not great with the putter. He is much better on bent and POA. So I have some concerns, and then seeing this 25% made it a pretty easy fade. I'm not full fading Akshay. I'm going to have him in a couple lineups, but I am definitely going to be underweight on this 25%. Stefan Jaeger for you. I don't know if that means you are going to play him or if you are jokingly mentioning Stefan Jaeger to avoid him, because I have a pretty strong feeling on Jaeger. So I'll play Akshay, but not very much. Instead, I'm going to come to Kevin Yu. Again, defending champion. I'm not expecting him to win, but he is at least projected a full 10% lower in terms of ownership. Much better off the tee than Akshay is. Much more accurate, a lot more distance. I'm gonna use Akshay here. Irons might not be as in form as they have been in the past. I'm not worried. Give me Kevin Yu, the defending champion. I still think he will play well, even if he doesn't win. A lot of people have talked up Minwoo Lee. It makes a lot of sense with the distance and the putter. You know, the two basic skills that Sanderson Farms seems to promote. I'm just not there with Minwoo. A lot of it being that the irons aren't the greatest, but at 16%, Minwoo is such a volatile player. I'm going to stay away from Minwoo. Minwoo is the kind of player that I would much rather bet outright than use in DFS. That's how you like it. I'm playing him. I play a single lineup, so I enter a lot of cash in small field. Yeah. So just the way I approach DFS and the way I approach wagering, I would much rather wager Minwoo Lee, knowing that his range of outcomes are basically infinite. He could very well win this, and he could very well finish DFL. So I'd much rather wager that player than use him in DFS. Rose mentions Davis Thompson, third most projected owned player. He's been pretty good here. I believe this is 3 for 3 or maybe 3 for 4. I just don't like the ownership, Rose. I am much more confident in Thorbjornsen, despite the fact that he's more owned than Davis Thompson. So I'm playing Thor much more often than Davis Thompson. I'll be playing a little bit of Thompson. You know, plenty of opportunities. Very good off the tee. Good with the irons. Like, he's got a lot going for him. Clearly, he rated 4th in the rankings. But I don't like this ownership, especially when I'm very confident in Thorbjornsen. I'll be eating chalk and playing Mac Meisner, Vincent Whaley, and Sami Valimaki. So, interesting. I am not actually in on any of those players, but we'll get to that. So yeah, I mean, this is the guy I'm going to be completely overloaded on. I'm all in on Thorbjornsen. If he doesn't play well, I will lose. I'm very confident in his ability this week. Seems like a very good fit for him. Finished 8th in his one trip here to the Sanderson Farms. This doesn't feel like a good JT Poston course. You can see that by his course value. He has not played well here. I do think Griot's a little bit sneaky as well at 21%. I hate this ownership, much like Davis Thompson. So I bet Griot, and I will play him a little bit, but I definitely backed off Griot in DFS seeing this ownership. But I do like Griot because I have an outright on him. I do think he is a little bit sneaky this week. How can you not? They are low 7K. We'll get there. There's a lot in the 7s that I like. And if you're playing a whole lot of players, and you know, I don't hate it. But as you said, Sammy is the most common, most popular low 7. So I don't know how unique you're going to get with a Sami Valimaki lineup, especially with Davis Thompson. That's my concern with that. Rico Hoey's fine as well. A little bit popular, but number one player off the tee. He rose, pretty significantly with all the emphasis and off the tee. He's much like Joel Damon. He just cannot putt. He's just got to make some putts to contend, but the ball striking is there. And then kind of the crux of the poll question, we've got both Højgaard brothers here, Rasmus at 96, Nikolai at 91. I'm going to play both, but I'm going to play a lot more of Nikolai than I am Rasmus. Nikolai is part of my core this week. Rasmus is not. So if you want my technical answer to the poll question, for me, I am technically playing both, but I am much more in favor of Nikolai than Rasmus. Mainly low risk lineups. Very well. So there's a look at the nines. Again, I'm not playing any Bridgman, not playing any Poston. I'm going to take a stand on Minwoo Lee. Not going to play any of him. I am going to play a metric F ton of Thor Bjornsson. Very little Akshay. Very little Thompson. I love Griot this week, but I'm going to play very little of him in DFS, and I'm going to choose to have my exposure of him be in the outright. Moving to the eights. Alex Smalley played very well here. Again, kind of comes down to the putter for him, but he's putt well here. So take that for what you will. Cameron Champ, former champion of the Sanderson Farms, second off the tee. Surprisingly, only 13th in distance when he's normally top 3. So take that for what you will. He's not an abject failure on these greens. Good with the long irons. Gives himself plenty of birdie looks. Whether he converts them or not is a different story. I like Champ. He's just kind of priced oddly for me. And when we get into lineup building, you'll see the kind of lineups I'm making. Cameron Champ just kind of gets squeezed for me. I know Mackenzie Hughes is a former champion, but this play seems like it favors off the tee and ball striking in general. He had a very good week the week he did that. Having said that, he was still negative off the tee. His irons, overperformed his career baseline. He made putts. I'm not there with Mackenzie Hughes. Not there with Max Homa. In the eights, I kind of like Luke Clanton, although I was really disappointed with his performance at the Procore. I will still use a little bit of Luke Clanton. 7.5% on a guy that is very, very talented is appealing. And don't overlook Garrett Higo. Even though he rated out, very, very middling for me, this is also the kind of course that Higo seems to thrive. You remember his win at the Palmetto. Palmetto was long, but it was firm. Bermuda, like very fast Bermuda greens. His off the tee, he can get kind of wayward, but it hasn't stopped him from being, somewhat successful here in the past. He's got plenty of distance to keep up. Decent putter on the surface. I think Higo could be sneaky this week. The older twin is my favorite. I believe, isn't that Rasmus? Not expecting him to win, but I will not be surprised. Fair enough. So there's a look at the eights. Moving into the sevens, upper sevens, we talked about Jaeger, or Rose, you mentioned Jaeger. Jaeger has been very, very consistent here at the Sanderson Farms. In the past 5 years, he's 4 for 4 with 4 finishes between T23 and T30. There's just something to be said about that. His off the tee is accuracy based, problems, not distance. Very aggressive player, which you like on these courses that can become birdie fests. So I do like Jaeger, especially at this 8.5% projected ownership. And then otherwise in the upper sevens, take a look at Jesper Svensson, a guy that is, basically one-dimensional in the sense that, 10th off the tee, he's a decent enough iron player, but he's just long. It's just, the number one distance player in this field, along with Nicholas Norgard. So I do like Jesper Svensson. Not a great putter, not great with the long irons. You're playing him for the potential to overpower this course, and that's generally what Jesper Svensson is he has that enticing potential to just flat out overpower the course. Higo, my guy, he's playing real confident. Yeah, I do like Higo this week. I think he'd be pretty sneaky. Moving into the mid sevens, again, I just mentioned him, Norgard. I do have quite a bit of concern with him. Unlike Jesper Svensson's actually, an acceptable iron player. It's not great, but he can at least hit some greens. Norgard will literally hit it into the next county. He can get so atrocious with the irons, and that scares me. But third off the tee, tied with Jesper Svensson in distance. Very, very small sample size here, but a better putter than Jesper Svensson on, extremely fast lightning Bermuda greens. So, I'll play both of these. I'm going to play Norgard probably, 2 or 3 times. Jesper Svensson maybe 3 or 4 times. I'm playing them just for the raw potential of mashing 360-yard drives and having literal flip wedges in. So if you're not in on either of these, I don't blame you one bit, because they are very, very, very inconsistent. Elsewhere in the mid sevens, like Taylor Moore is kind of interesting. Taylor Moore is generally pretty darn good putter on Bermuda. Not in good form right now. This is a course history play. He's been pretty darn good here, either 4 for 4 or 3 for 4. So it's worth a look if you really, really value course history. Take a look at Taylor Moore. I'll consider 74 mid sevens. I kind of like Lee Hodges. He's been pretty darn good here. Plenty of opportunities. Third in irons. I do worry about Lee Hodges' long irons. He's much better from that, like 100 to 150 range. But solid enough player, and he's played well here. I'll give him a look. You mentioned Sami Välimäki. Again, he is by far and away, seemingly, the most popular play here in the mid sevens. He's the only one above double digits, Rosé. He's at 11%. Matty Schmid 9.5. Could creep up into 10%, but like Sammy's not a good driver of the golf ball, and that's where a lot of my focus has been this week. I know he goes low, particularly at big places like Vedanta, so it seems like it would fit. But he's just not a good driver of the golf ball. He actually lacks some distance. I don't like the fit for him. And the one time he played here, it was not very good. He made the cut, but it was a 63rd. Unfortunately, the reminder to like and subscribe is scrolling through, but you'll just have to take my word for it. There it is. It was a 63rd, and all of it came in putting. You just can't bank on that. You just can't. Yes, he's a good putter in general, but you can't expect a guy to make or gain 7 every time he plays a course. So I've got some concerns with Sammy. Him being the most popular, mid to low 7, I can get away from it. But I mean, you see, he rated out well for me. I'm just not there. In the low 7s, because in the mid 7s, I'm more going to like Lee Hodges, which I understand 2% doesn't seem like a lot. I'm hoping this is actually a little bit high on him. And like I said, I'm playing a little bit of Norgard, playing some Jesper Svensson. I'm even sprinkling like Taylor Moore and Ricky Castillo a little bit. In the low 7s, I got 2 players here, technically 3 players that were in my top 10. Eric Van Rooyen, not in love with, but definitely going to use. You think about these easier courses, his win at the Worldwide Technologies down in Mexico. Very easy, wide open course. Irons aren't there, but you know he will go low. Top 10 in birdies or better. Second in opportunities. I think EVR kind of fits here. He finished 16th in his one appearance in the past 5 years. So I think it's worth a shot. So you think Hodges over Valimaki? I would, Darnell. But if you're that confident in Sammy, then I would, you know, I've just got concerns. Not to say that Lee Hodges doesn't have concerns either. He does. Lee Hodges is not good from 200 plus. Lee Hodges lacks some distance. But I don't see this being a good fit for Sammy, considering he finished, 63rd, his one try. Hodges has played here several times, and it's been decent. Nothing spectacular by any means, but decent. So, and I apologize. I put you, Rose, or I thought Rose was the one that was saying he was playing Sammy. That was you, Darnell, so my apologies for mixing that up. Like I was saying, in the low sevens, I'll give EVR a couple runs in a lineup, or put him in a couple lineups. Hayden Springer finished 8th, I think, last year. Very good at the length of par fives. He, like Van Rooyen, will go low. He'll get a lot of birdies. Hayden Springer is also an excellent putter on Bermuda. So, I'll give both of these guys a little bit of run, in 2 or 3 lineups, considering I play mini lineups. I'm not going overboard with it by any means, but, I'll definitely have them. You mentioned Meisner. I believe you mentioned Meisner. Just no thanks. Off the tee's been really bad lately. The irons have been good, but again, I've had a lot of emphasis on off the tee, and he hadn't been very good off the tee lately, so Taylor Montgomery, worth a look, I think. He's been decent here. I believe this is 1 or 2 tournaments, so it's a bit of a small sample size, but he's been good here. He does lack a lot of off the tee. He's just an immaculate putter, which helps him, in these par fives, helps him convert on these birdies or better. He's just, like I said, he's an immaculate putter. Plays his best when it's easy. I'm going to play some Taylor Montgomery. Not in love with it. I'm going to try and limit my use of him, considering, he rated out pretty well for me. I'm always wary of Taylor Montgomery, but I'm definitely going to use him, Rose. Can I dive into Matty Schmid? Again, one of these things where on the surface he looks very, very good, and maybe you don't value course history. It's understandable. Like, off the tee, he's been good lately. He was really good in the first playoff event. Kind of struggled before that, but at specifically the Sanderson Farms, he has struggled. He did finish top 20 here last year, but had 2 missed cuts before that, and it's all based around the putter. He gained, he finished top 20. He lost, he missed the cut. He's always been generally decent with off the tee. His irons have been pretty good. I don't hate it, I guess. I just figured he was going to be a lot more popular than what it seems at 9.5%. At 9.5%, I think it's worthwhile. I wouldn't go overboard with it, but if you're not crazy about Lee Hodges, like, I would have thought Matty Schmid would have been, like, coming into this week, or at least coming into today when I got the projected ownerships from Gabe, I would have thought Matty Schmid was going to be more popular than what he is. Seeing him at sub 10%, it's worth a shot. It's worth a shot. He's not a guy that I typically turn to, unless it's like a specialty course like the Caribbean. But this plays some like a Caribbean style event. And to be fair to Matty Schmid, this is his worst statistic, this opportunities game, 75th. Like, he doesn't have a pink or red statistic across here. So, I mean, Now you're probably talking me into putting Matty Schmidt in the lineup. Damn you. Yeah, I don't hate it. I like it a lot more than Sammy Valimaki. I'll put it that way, Darnell. I like it a lot more than Valimaki, even though Valimaki technically is a couple places higher per the numbers. Okay, getting close on time. We still need to make lineups, so I'm going to get through this here. Talked about Van Rooyen, talked about Springer, not there with Mac Meisner, talked about Montgomery. At 7K flat, we talked about Joel Damon. And, you know, I understand why the computational equation put him second. I think it's fine. I'm not all that crazy about it. Instead, at 7,000, I'm going to two different players. I really like Lonto Griffin this week. And I'm actually going to take a flyer a little bit, like twice or three lineups on Rosner. Rosner mainly being the fact that he is very good at 200 plus, which, you know, we talked about quite a bit. Those two par threes that are over 200 yards, the par fives, which, you know, he's pretty good at. Irons have been very good. So I do think Rosner's a little sneaky, but I like Lonto Griffin a lot. Lonto Griffin's going to be core for me down here. Coming off his top 5 finish at the Pro Core, I know this course value doesn't seem like it's all that great. He's had a couple of high finishes. He's also had some missed cuts, so he's quite boom or bust. But I'm willing to do a boom or bust player in the 7s as opposed to like the 8s or the 9s. Again, played great at the Pro Core. A little bit worrisome that he gained 9 there. But at the Sanderson Farms, you know, he's got a top 30 and damn near a top 10. But another thing with Lonto Griffin, he's also been great on these greens. Sometimes he's been otherworldly on these greens. So he's very comfortable on these greens. Whether or not the irons, you know, work for him that week will remain to be seen. But that's a lot of the reason why I like Lonto Griffin this week, is that he loves putting on these greens. A little bit. I'm just showing you some of my thought process because there's a lot that goes into it. I actually don't hate Isaiah Salinda either at 71, Darnell. Salinda is somebody that I was quite interested in early on this week with the distance, top 10 in distance. Lots of conversions of birdies or better. Plays par 5s extremely well. I am worried because he is one of the worst at 200 plus proximity, or at least he has been one of the worst at 200 plus proximity. But I do think Salinda's worth a flyer. But again, you and I have talked about this several times. I play multiple lineups where I can take a shot on a guy in one lineup. Like play Salinda once and then play Joel Damon with essentially the same lineup, just subbing those two out. So, but I don't hate Salinda either, since you mentioned him. But I like Lonto, I like Rosner. Going down into the 6s. Again, you don't have to go into the 6s this week. You don't, especially with the soft pricing. However, if you're going to get greedy up top, maybe you're trying to find a way to get Davis Thompson, Rasmus, and a third 9K. Like maybe you're trying to do that. In the 6Ks, there's a couple of players that I do want to mention. I was going to be very high on Henrik Norlander, but he is the most projected owned player in the 6Ks, so I can't take too much credit for that. Just understand, in the past 5 years here at Sanderson Farms, Norlander is 5 for 5 with 3 top 5s in the past 5 years here. There's just something about this course that he is very, very comfortable about. So it is a very, very worthwhile play, but he is the most popular 6K play. So instead, I'm going to take you to two other players at his same price, kind of the same amount of ownership, but Thomas Rosenmuller. A lot of off the tee prowess here. Whereas Norlander is all about the irons and lacks quite a bit of distance. Rosenmuller is a bomber. True and true. 8th off the tee. Top 30 or close to it in distance. Generally struggles with the putter. You're playing Rosenmuller for the off the tee prowess. So it's worth a look. And then if you wanted to be technical, the mad scientist play is Christopher Ventura. Finished 6th here. It was either last year or 2 years ago. Pretty darn good with the irons. Good enough at 6,800. Lots of opportunities. And a pretty darn good putter on Lightning Bermuda. So give Christopher Ventura a look as well if you're down in the 6s. Okay, let's start making some lineups. I know I'm a little bit over on time, so I'm going to try and get through as much of this as I can. I don't know what that is. Feel free to ask questions still if you have them. If I don't get to them, I apologize. I'm already running over on time. If we're going to try and build what we think is going to be one of the more common lineups, we're going to try and fit the two highest ownerships in here at Akshay and Thorbjorn Cern. Apparently is his name now. Thorbjorn Cern. Aha. And this is why this is very, very soft pricing this week, and why I feel comfortable getting away from some of the chalk down here in the low to mid 7s, like Sammy, like Matty Schmid, like Vincent Whaley. I didn't talk about, who is garnering double-digit projected ownerships. You've got a lot of maneuverability here with these two main players. You're still averaging 7,600. You could probably squeeze in another 9K. It would be tough, but you could do it. Otherwise, you can come down into the 8s. Cameron Champ, a former champion here, not getting as much ownership. Griot, Hoey. Yeah, let's go ahead and throw Rico Hoey into the... No, because the bottom of this is Sammy. Jesper. Actually, might have to... Mark Hubbard probably fits into this. Sammy. Jesper. And then 73, maybe it's a Mac Meisner at 8.5%. Maybe they come down off of Hubbard to a Patrick Fishburne. And then make it a 75. Shit. Yeah, let's go Matty Schmid. I mean, this is kind of top heavy here with these two, but I'm trying to get as much ownership in these lineups as possible. This will be, fairly common, I would think, style of lineup. If our fellow contestants aren't going with Akshay, if they go more balanced, let's say like Davis Thompson, Griot, much the same here. Let's try to squeeze Mark Hubbard into this, and then Vincent Whaley, we'll throw him into this as a potential chalky lineup build. Sammy Valimaki. Oh yeah, 78. That's Fishburne. Perfect. Didn't have to finagle much there. Still 90% combined projected ownership. That's it's pretty ugly. Again, maneuver some of these players around if you think someone's going to be less or more owned, but those two lineups are going to be pretty darn popular in style. So one way you can go about it is you can drop into the sixes, which doesn't seem to be too terribly popular this week. Again, Norlander the highest at 5.5%. Rosenmiller at 5. Ben Coles at 5 or 5.5. I'm going to use Christopher Ventura here. 4%. Not a whole lot of uniqueness, but enough. And as much as I don't like Akshay or have some concerns, you could easily do an Akshay lineup here instead. Let's do Rasmus. Let's start with Rasmus and just get, a little bit greedy up here. Maybe we go like Rasmus. Again, I'm going to use Thorbjornsen, but maybe you're not there with him like Rose. Maybe you're off of Thorbjornsen. Maybe you go Davis Thompson and Rasmus. Let's put the brothers together. Why not? Just have some fun with this lineup. Go Rasmus, Thorbjornsen, and Nikolai. You still have, 2 mid-7 prices available to you if you're willing to drop into the sixes. There's been a lot of talk about mid-7s this, tonight. I think with Thorbjornsen specifically, I think you're probably not able to do like a Sami Välimäki, but like if you were to take Thorbjornsen out, maybe if you did like let's do maybe a Kevin Yu, and this is another reason why I like Kevin Yu so much. Like now you're getting really unique, seemingly, especially off all this chalk up here. Akshay at 25, Thompson at 20, Thorbjornsen at 24 to 25. Like, you're in the mid-teens here. You're going to be pretty darn unique. This is why I like the players that I do this week. But anyway, Kevin Yu, both Højgaards, coming down into the mid and low 7s. We talked a lot, like Isaiah Salinda's fine. Taylor Montgomery would be fine in this. And then finish it off with somebody like Matty Schmid. Like, if you're willing to drop into the 6Ks, you're gaining a whole lot of uniqueness this week because it just doesn't seem very popular. So that's one way to go about it. But the way I've been most doing this, I'm doing my 999, 777 kind of shell, if you will. Mostly going with Kevin Yu. Sometimes I'll sneak up to Batia. Sometimes I'll start at Davis Thompson. But I've been going Kevin Yu and Thorbjornsen about 80% of the time if I'm doing these lineups. Like I'm telling you right now, Thorbjornsen's going to be in 85 to 90% of my lineups. Kevin Yu's probably going to be in more than half of my lineups. I'm just really confident in Thorbjornsen. But, starting these two, and then a lot of times I've been trying to sneak in that third 9K, whether it's Nikolai or Rico Hoey. I've been going more often to Nikolai, and you still have enough room where you don't have to go into the sixes. Again, I mentioned Antoine Rosner. Joel Damon could very well fit into this and is going to be fairly unique. Not as unique as Joel Damian, but still fairly unique. Eric Van Rooyen. Again, I'm going to go with like Hodges in this. 71 is Taylor Montgomery, Isaiah Salinda. I love Lonto Griffin this week. Like, this one's a little bit higher combined ownership just because of the behemoth ownership that Thorbjornsen is. But this has been my standard lineup this week. This 999, 777, mixing and matching. Kevin Yu, Thorbjornsen, Højgaard. And then I'll go Kevin Yu, Thorbjornsen, Rico Hoey. Then I'll go Davis Thompson, Thorbjornsen, Rico Hoey. Just mixing and matching between the 3 9s and the 3 7s. Occasionally I'll come down to a Cameron Champ and make it a bit more balanced. Sometimes I'll go up to like Stefan Jaeger and drop into a 6 to make it work. But generally speaking, this is the style of lineup that I've been building. So to end the show, I'll show you my core, which is Kevin Yu. I know this won't all fit in terms of pricing, again, just showing you where the most of my focus has been. I guess technically Rico Hoey, but I'm gonna highlight him in a little bit of a shade of an orange, because he's kind of at the bottom part of my core, maybe like 30 to 40% of my lineups. Jaeger, much the same if I'm coming up to the low sevens, and then like for me it's Jesper, Norgard, Lanto, and Henrik Norlander. But I've been mixing and matching a whole lot in the sevens. A whole lot. I'm probably using 10 to 12 different players in the 7Ks. I didn't fixate on any one player. I decided to really concentrate a lot of my focus in the 9s, and then take the scattershot approach in the 7s, playing, like I said, maybe more like 12 to 14 guys. And then if I am dropping into the 6Ks, it's Norlander more often than not, just because of his immaculate course history. Christopher Ventura would also fit here as well. But that's going to be it for the show this evening. I need to thank Rose and Darnell for jumping into chat. Very, very much appreciated. Thanks to everyone else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, supports the channel by liking the videos, commenting, and subscribing. I always appreciate it. I love what I do, taking a very in-depth look at golf statistics, giving you a statistician and data analyst view of what he sees, trying to help us all win a little bit of money in the process. We've had a couple of weeks off here. The Pro Core was not very good for yours truly, so we're going to try and get on the right foot for the Sanderson Farms as we finalize 2025 and the FedEx Fall. So thanks again for all the support, for all of the wagers you've made this week for the Sanderson Farms, for all the DFS contests you play this week for the Sanderson Farms, for this weekend and every weekend. May all your bets be profitable.